Good Monday morning, everyone. What I have in my hand here is the spring 2019-2020 edition of the Witch's Almanac. And they were nice enough to ask me to write an article for this edition. And I chose to write about the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. And I'm going to share that with you right now. Many of us are familiar with the term Holy Guardian Angel. It entered the popular vocabulary of Western occultists in 1888 when Golden Dawn Hierophant S.L. MacGregor Mathers translated and published fragments of a rather unique 15th century magical grimoire, The Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. While most medieval texts were recipe books filled with spells to conjure and trap dangerous spirits from infernal regions to serve as the magician's slaves, the sacred magic was very different. In fact, the text posited that in order to exercise godlike powers, the magician must first actually be godlike. And that true magical power can only be wisely and effectively employed if the magician has first attained a significant level of spiritual illumination. A spiritually enlightened individual lives and functions in harmony with the supreme consciousness of the cosmos. And the only way to properly harmonize with this infinite consciousness is to mutate one's personal consciousness so that it perfectly reflects and resonates with that universal consciousness. The Abramelin book reveals that each human being is linked from birth to a personal angel. Although the book talks about this holy guardian angel as an objective being, its nature is perhaps less superstitiously described as being our own projected, perfectly illuminated self that we are currently too sleepy to realize is us. It's a pretty cool concept. And the book goes on to give painfully detailed instructions how the magician can prepare himself or herself to be wedded to the HGA and achieve this new expanded consciousness. At first glance, all this seems like a very straightforward and objective endeavor. And in one way it is. After all, magic is facilitated by activating and interacting with colorful and dramatic metaphors of abstract powers and energies. It's easy for me to imagine I have a cool angel hovering around me, and if I could just attract it to my bedroom and somehow get it to permanently mate with me, my consciousness would take a quantum expansion. I'd be transmuted into a new, mutated magician on my way to omnipotent godlike powers and illumination. But exactly how does this actually work? I'm sure it works differently for everyone. And I'm sure if you've read this far, you might be curious if it has ever happened to me. The answer is yes. I say this without evasion, equivocation, or mental reservation of any kind. And in case you are curious, I find knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel to be in essence exactly as advertised. Everything I've ever read about it, everything I've ever heard about it, it's all true. But for me, the experience was nothing like I expected. In fact, after 40 years of psychedelics, magic rituals, meditations, fasting, initiations, mantras, pranayama, a litany of minor epiphanies, and sex magicking myself to near blindness, I had grown old and, quite frankly, stopped expecting anything to happen. But it happened. Would you like to hear about it? It's difficult, impossible really, to properly describe. Besides the intensely intimate and personal factors necessary to this equation will vary wildly with each individual on Earth. But I feel I must share what I can, because now it's all I want to talk about. It's all I want to think about. It's all I want to sing about. I comb my brain looking for word vessels capable of capturing even a droplet of the spray from this infinite ocean of love. But I can only come up with 4 words that begin to say it. I love all things. Sorry, that really doesn't say it, because it's a sentence and uses parts of speech. And because I love all nouns and all verbs and all adverbs and adjectives and pronouns, I love the silence between the words. I love the space between the letters. I love you. I love every woman of you. I love every man of you. I love every child, animal, plant, mineral, every cell, molecule, atom, photon, and subatomic particle. I exhale, and my breath says, I love you, to the universe. And with every inhalation, the universe answers back, I love you too. I know when I draw my last breath at the end of this Lon life, this mantra will continue, because this love song is all that is holding existence together. I just want to make love to the firmament. For years, my wife Constance has said romance is her religion. And now I say it too, because this is a very romantic tale. Not long ago, I was in New York City to play a show at Greenwich Village's Café Vivaldi. I stayed a few days in Queens at the home of a dear friend. For me, New York City is the most romantic city on earth. The city of Gershwin and Cole Porter. The city that has, for the last decade, been my muse and the venue for my musical rebirth. I wasn't doing magic. At least I didn't think I was doing magic. I was simply busy writing new love songs and preparing for my weekend gig. My host had been trying to introduce me to the ecstasies of tango. He's a very serious dancer and travels each year to the sweaty grottos of Buenos Aires. Back in New York, he disappears nearly every night into the dark and sultry tango clubs in Midtown Manhattan. That's exactly what he did that night. He left me alone in my Jackson Heights hermitage and suggested I watch a few tango videos featuring Mariano Chico Frumbali dancing with Juana Sepulveda. This iconic pair are perhaps the most passionate, romantic, and exciting tango dancers in the world. As I watched and listened to that torturously beautiful music, I began to think about love. How all my life I've been really good at loving. Very good. Too good, in fact. I fall in love easily, deeply and often. All my life I've had seemingly boundless supply of love to give to my friends, my lovers, my art. I've never had a problem loving. No problem giving love. But for as long as I can remember, I've had serious difficulty receiving love. A problem accepting love. A problem being loved. My heart could pump out a rich, flowing gusher of love blood to all of the universe, but for some reason would not allow that love to flow back in with equal volume and intensity. That is a magical problem indeed, for love, like the mysterious fifth element spirit, is an alternating current, an active-passive force. As Chico held Juana in his arms, and as she put her arm so purposefully across his huge back and shoulders, all the old love songs suddenly made profound sense, as if the voice of God was speaking directly to my soul. And in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make, the Beatles said. The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. Ed Nabez from the Nature Boy. I'd like to add that when Juana put her hand so purposefully on Chicho's back, I felt it on my own back, directly behind my heart. And my heart sort of had a flutter, if you will. Then something very wonderful happened. Between the notes of the music, between the steps on the dance floor, time and space literally collapsed like the bellows of the bandeon accordion in the tango movie. My Jackson Heights flat became a time machine, and I was taken nearly 50 years into my past. It was not a memory. This was not going back. This was now. And I was there. I was there at a moment in time when the full force of my pure love was being joyously and totally accepted, totally received, and instantly the reciprocal ray of love of the exact infinite intensity was being returned back to me. Nearly 50 years ago, I didn't recognize what was going on. It was too pure, too simple, too profound, too subtle for my young heart. I feared annihilation in this awesome, fiery beam. I recoiled and turned aside the catcher's mitt of my heart. I deflected the full force of that pure, requited love. And I had been deflecting it ever since. That was the timeless moment of my fall. That was the moment that I was banished from the paradise love of the angel. But that eternal moment was back. I was there again. I could change that moment. I could change the past. The video orchestra played a dramatic flourish. Chicho violently pulled Juana into his arms and dragged her limp body across the dance floor. Yet it seemed as if her listless surrender became conquest, and that was the infinite force that was pushing them both. Who was active? Who was passive? There in the living room temple, before the altar of the big TV screen, I swooned at the sight of the tips of Juana Sepulveda's black stilettos being dragged across the dance floor. I gave myself permission to change that moment in time. I opened my heart, and for the first time in this lifetime caught the full reciprocal force of love. Not my love, not her love, but love. Do you know what feedback is? Feedback is when you put an active microphone near an amplified speaker it's connected to. It triggers an almost instantaneous, ear-splitting howl, and that's what happened at that moment. Only it was a feedback of love. Instead of a painful screech getting louder and louder, it was a sweet, clear note that became sweeter and sweeter and clearer and clearer. I was thrown back into my chair. It felt as though a fiery pinwheel had been set ablaze in my chest. It spun faster and faster, and the sparks it threw off spread throughout my whole body, right down to the pores of my skin. My hair stood on end, and my hands and fingers and feet and toes were charged with electricity. I was afraid to move my hands for fear I would knock things off the wall across the room. I reconnected with the supreme alternating current of life. And I burned with wall-to-wall eternally feedbacking love that lights the stars. I knew if I remained seated, I would incinerate completely into that light, but I didn't care. I pulled on my shoes and grabbed my hat and coat and went out into the cool evening and walked and walked. I don't know where, I don't know for how long. I was careful not to bump into people on the sidewalk. I knew if I touched them, they would burst into flames. It was very late when I returned. I was still exploding. But the explosion was now madly centered in a containment chamber roughly in the neighborhood of my heart. It's still there. It hasn't gone away. It was always there. I just had to wake up to realize it. I suppose the yogi will recognize the experience as the opening of the anahata, or the heart chakra, the magician as the marriage of the microcosm 5 and the macrocosmic 6, the Kabbalist as the raising of consciousness to the 6th sephira of the tree of life, Tifereth, the Christian ecstatic as the mystery of the Holy Grail, the witch as the cosmic essence of the great rite. Call it what you want. It is actually as simple as the song lyric. And in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. And the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. Yes, the Holy Guardian Angel is real, objective, and tangible. Because when you're looking at me, you're looking at my angel. And that was from the Witch's Almanac. And that's where we will stop for today. Happy Monday, everyone. Tomorrow I start a new series of Chinese initiations, Kabbalah initiations, online. But anyway, I've got a heavy, heavy week of things ahead of me, and I hope will be awake enough to join you tomorrow at this same time. So until then, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.